So delighted to formally welcome everyone to today's webinar, Chatbots and Artificial Intelligence in the Contact Centre. I'm Rachel and I'll be your webinar chairperson for today. We've got a brilliant agenda for today and two excellent speakers who celebrated with us recently on our 200th webinar. Delighted to welcome back Peter Massey from Bud. Welcome, Peter.
Good afternoon.
And I know that you're very passionate about this subject. Can you explain a bit more about, your love of the subject, kind of thing?
Well, it probably goes back to some of the stuff we were just talking about, is that there are so many applications for technology. The question's not so much the technology as to how you apply it. I think chatbots fall very nicely into that category, as we'll talk about.
Brilliant, we look forward to that. And delighted to welcome back Mike Murphy from Genesis. Welcome, Mike.
Hi, Rachel. Hi, everybody. Good to be here.
And, delighted to hear about kind of what Genesis's views and how it's all progressing with the new technology. Without giving away some of the game of what you're talking, how is it going with Genesis with chatbots and AI?
Yeah, I would say it's a very exciting subject. We are looking forward to a lot of your value capability for our customers and for consumers out there who will be using it. I think what I've been pleased to kind of see is that we've been a little bit sort of careful in our introduction of the capabilities, and I think we've been thorough in making sure that we have a good sort of appreciation of the issues that are involved here, which I think we're going to touch on in the webinar. So it's not a sort of I think it's a considered view, I think is the point I'm making. And I think if you kind of jump in naively, you'll have some issues. Whereas I think our experience has kind of led us to think, hang on, just let's do this completely and then launch. So we're looking forward to some interesting new tools in the next 4 to 6 weeks. Very exciting.
Brilliant. Exciting times. So just to let everyone know, we are taking a recording of today's webinar and it will be available online about an hour after the webinar on the following link, callcenterhelper.com/recorded-webinars. I know a lot of you like to share the presentation with everybody, with the rest of your team. So we are continuing on the discussion in the chat room today. That's callcenterhelper.com/chat. It is in a separate window, so you do need to put them side by side, but there is the added bonus of being able to download today's slides on the link here, and you can download the chat log after the webinar. Also, we're running today our champagne or box of chocolates for the best tip. Sadly, I'm not allowed to take it away with me, so we will be shipping that out later on today. You just need to write #question if you want to ask the panel a question and #tip for a tip. So like to start today by asking a poll question, which is, are you planning to deploy any form of AI in your contact center over the next 12 months? Yes, no, or yet to be decided. Hopefully we can change your mind on today's webinar, and I will launch that. Peter, what are your thoughts? What do you think the vote's going to come out as?
It depends what you define as AI, but I would imagine that in its broadest sense, most organizations have now got forms of AI already in place. So I'd put the yes as the highest score, but that's maybe optimistic. We'll see.
Okay, so I'll share the results, close that and share them. So 46% say yes, actually that snuck up at the last minute. Sample size of 122 people. 45% say yet to be decided and 8% say no. Peter, was that, just what you were expecting?
Well, it does go back to the definition of AI in its broadest sense, and there's so many different forms of AI. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Yeah.
Brilliant. So on that note, I will hand over the baton to you to go through your presentation.
Okay. Here we go. So let's see. Show my screen. There we go. So, yeah, an unusual title, as you notice on there. AI in our family has got a different meaning altogether because my wife's a vet. So but AI means artificial insemination. You can imagine the stories we get into with that. So just a brief background, work with lots of UK companies, many more around the world. Specifically, as I mentioned on the intro, Amazon's growth model, the best service, no service, a very successful book written by two of my colleagues, Bill and David. And we're constantly working in this space between the sort of machine, the online and the contact center world, and filling in some of the gaps that sit there. There's a few points, I'm going to make 3 points really today. One is getting beyond the jargon. So AI is a phrase that's being bandied around for all sorts of things. And as a one-time physicist, it's kind of something I learned very early, is when you hear the jargon, is get to the definition of what somebody is talking about. It's not string theory. In other words, it's not, 10th dimensional complexity, but very often people are using the words in the generic sense, and it's worth getting underneath that. So we'll have a look at that briefly. The second point, you need your customer and business logic to program a chatbot. In other words, you can't just buy a chatbot, plug it in and expect it to work. So that's the second point we'll discuss. And the third point, your team and the intelligence will optimize what happens, but you do need a team to actually focus on putting a chatbot in and to keep it optimized. The levels of intelligence that go with most chatbots will not optimize an application that isn't designed and fit for purpose, which goes back to the point we were discussing on the way in about, what IVR very often fails for customers. Chatbots can fail for customers too, unless you've given them the support. So we'll go through these 3 things over the next sort of 15 minutes or so. So, yep, AI, here's a bunch of vets. This is my wife's year of at uni in Edinburgh, one of their drinking sessions. But for a stranger like me turning up, when I start talking, people say, what do you do? And you mention AI, the conversation get very confused very quickly. Artificial intelligence isn't actually new. This is an example of the Mechanical Turk back in 1760. And actually, it was a chess master. It as a machine could play chess and beat everybody in the world. But the secret was actually on the little seat on the bottom right there, the little velvet cushion, because the world's chess master was actually sat inside the machine, fooling people and winning all sorts of bets. And this particular Mechanical Turk was still winning bets some sort of 60 years later. It's kept as a very tight secret as to how it did it. But artificial intelligence, I suppose the point here, is a combination of machine and people. And we need to get underneath that to understand what's going on. So if we have a look at one end of where AI is at, what does good look like? Then you can have a look. It's open season. You can have a look at the Google Brain team, have a look at it, and have a look at the research that they're actually doing. And you can go into the papers that have been released. You can, if you're mathematically minded, you can go into all the Greek and Latin that's in there. But if you're not, it gives you an idea, perhaps just in the synopses, of the kind of subjects that people are investigating at the very leading edge of what's going on. What is at the very leading edge is, how does one machine say whether or not another machine is achieving a good result? So the question of what does good look like is actually the fundamental of where the leading edge at the moment is. So I'll try and illustrate that. You may have seen this example of the game called Go Zero, which is the game of Chinese sort of drafts, if you like, more complicated than chess, reputedly. And last year's AI was developed from reading all of the games that had been played between the various masters, and it was given all that data to play with and process and to work out how best the strategies might be. And it took something like, well, it took months basically to get to the point where it could beat the best people. This year's AI was programmed and was able to, within 40 days, teach itself from just knowing the rules of the game. It didn't have the data of the way the game had been played. So this is where the machine is actually teaching itself to do things. And often in the press, that's the kind of stuff that's getting the story, but that's not the commercially available stuff for the most part that we'll see in any of the contact center arrangements. And for those of you like three-letter acronyms, GANs is the word to drop. Generative Adversarial Networks. This is the way that two machines play against each other to work out what good looks like and to improve on any problem that's been given. And that's the way that the AlphaGo Zero device was developed. So the technology, yeah, great, but does it matter? Are we really that bothered? We're not really that bothered about it, but it is quite important, I think, to look at what people are claiming is AI and be clear the difference between learning from big data and using AI to look at large sets of data and improve results, which is current day technology, versus plug a machine in, let it go, it'll solve all the problems. That's not current technology. And so when we come back to chatbots, don't expect to plug in a chatbot and it do everything that you want it to do. You have to do some work, and we'll come on to that. So there's AI and there's AI, there's machine learning and there's big data, and that's the important part of it. There are a few other things we're just going to touch on very briefly to put into context about bots and chatbots. So I just want to touch on robots, cyborgs, bots, voice interfaces, chatbots to build up this jargon. So when we talk about robots, we often think of little humanoid things like this one, and the way in which these things have been developed. But in practice, what we're really looking at are the kind of things that build cars. And you may be used to seeing pictures of factories now. If you've ever done a car factory tour, it's very impressive, the extent of the robotics. But again, the robotics are not used for the finer detailing of the interiors and so on and so forth. They're not yet at that stage of the finer handling, doing that better than people. You may have seen these kind of robots which bring goods around the Amazon warehouses, and these are individual robots running around. Or in fact, if you think about a modern logistics warehouse, the whole system is a robot effectively. It is, it's got intelligence, but it's not necessarily separate components. The whole system is robotic in that sense, but it's following guidelines that have been programmed into it. And then we get into the situation where we've got devices which are, part bot, part something else. So is that a bot or a robot or a car? It's part everything. But in terms of the way in which the device has been programmed, human beings step in and help with the decisions. The tragic case of an Uber Volvo that ran over a cyclist and killed them recently. I don't know if you read the press reports, but it was down to the fact that the tuning had been turned up to avoid swerving, to avoid plastic bags that were blowing in the wind. And because there had been so many false positives, the cyclist had been read as a false positive, not because the machine was wrong, but because a human had programmed that level of sensitivity into the car. So people and machines in tandem all the time. And maybe one day we'll get beyond, the odd implant in the arm to get through a security door like the Southampton University professor, but we'll start to see perhaps more interesting things over the future. But again, long way from a call center just yet. So let's just have a look at what a bot actually is, and again, a little bit of the jargon here. So I'd like to explain a bot by the very simple application called If This Then That, IFTTT, and you can Google it afterwards, have a look at it, play with the apps that are in there. But you can see that if this then that is basically a little piece of logic, and that's basically what bots do. They say, if you see this circumstance, then do this. If you hear these words, then do that. It's a little bit of logic, and in the jargon, people call those algorithms. Algorithms can be hugely complicated, but for the most part, they're really simply bits of logic in this sense. And IFTT is a way that you can program some of your connected devices to perform certain duties under certain conditions, hence the phrase, if this then that. So have your Philips lights turn on automatically at sunset is one example. Whoops, skip one through one there. This is one I like. Get yourself out of an awkward situation. It's for blind dates. So actually under certain conditions with your phone, you can get a phone call that comes in and you can run from the bar. So it's just a really simple bit of logic, but it brings home the point that it's just if this, then that at the end of the day. And these things are very simple to apply. As I say, Google it later, have a look, and you'll see some of the applets that you can program. And it's as simple as giving passwords giving permissions to set these things up. Very, very straightforward. Okay, so in the commercial world, then obviously what we are seeing quite a lot of now are remote RPA, or remote process automation. And this is an example from a case study that Bob Steller at Legal & General gave, illustrating what one of the robots that they were using, they had 16 of them, was programmed to do. And using it just to show what the simple logic processes that had been trained to do. And people had trained the machine to do these processes. Some of the very simple ones, like the one on the left, change of address, it was taking input and it was updating records, and it was moving them on. And it's quite interesting when you start to look at some of the large-scale applications for this stuff, just how much work robots can do. And of course, then if we come closer to chatbots, we've got separately as a technology the growth of the voice interface, from your Alexa to your Google Home, to some of the online applications such as HMRC have tried out. You've got effectively some recognition, you've got some intelligence behind that recognition, but you've also got connectivity, and you've got some of the remote process, you know, what are the steps that are requested going into those kind of technologies. But fundamentally, voice has become much, much stronger. And I don't know about you, I never used to use Siri, but today I can use Siri and find it. Well, even, you know, my Irish wife's name is Siobhan, it can hear that word and know what it looks like in the written terms. So quite complex words can be dealt with. So sorry, there we are to illustrate it. Which phone number? Siobhan Massey. So voice interaction isn't new, it's just that it started to work a lot better, and that some of that is down to the power of the AI that's behind the Apple or the Amazon machines that are doing these kind of things. So it brings us to chatbots. Chatbots using voice interfaces, not always, sometimes it can be web chat as well. But it's able to use a voice interface, applying business rules, depending on what you programmed it to do, and ultimately must be simple enough for the customer, and that's where often these things fall down. So the point there is really getting a little bit behind the jargon. Don't be afraid when you're talking to vendors or you're internally talking with your own teams to just query them and say, you know, well, what is the AI here? What is the AI doing versus what are people doing? And be very, very clear up front, because when you start to design the projects, you need to understand what will people have to design, what will the AI be able to help us improve, but don't expect AI to do everything. So let's have a look then at what we need when we're doing one of these projects. The point here is that, just as in the example of if this then that, we need to know what the customer and the business logic is going to be, so that we can program the chatbot with each thing that the customer might want done. So looking at some of the work we've done over the last 15 years with Best Services No Service, this is the sort of original set of principles that behind this approach. Number one in the middle there, challenge customer demand for service, and two, eliminate dumb contacts. This is the start point, and challenging customer demand is like saying, okay, what does a customer want? Why is it there? Do we need to have it at all? Can we remove the root cause of it? So before you start looking at chatbot applications, just make sure that the thing that you're going to ask the chatbot to do and the work you're going to ask the customer to do with the chatbot is actually necessary for the customer and for you. If not, it may be a case of root cause and removal rather than trying to automate it in the first place. The fundamental basics of the approach are really very simple. So on the top left, what do customers want, the customers need? On the top right, how do we supply what they want? How do we deliver it? And that delivery could be a contact center, it could be in retail, it could be through a chatbot or any other kind of automation. And at the bottom, what is the key to how we do that? You know, what is the knowledge we require? What is the process we require? What is the information that we require to access in order to be able to bring those things together? And those are the fundamentals of what we're looking at. So when we're looking at a chatbot, the first thing is, before we work out how the chatbot's going to be designed, we've got to work out what customers want, and then we're going to have to work out what knowledge we require to give the bot in order to be able to work properly. So what does the customer want? So what do you need to do to meet the need? And then what information do you require to meet that need? These are just very basic fundamentals, obviously. And for us in our approach, we start very, very simply with the customer's needs in their words. So this is an insurance example. You know, you can categorize what customers want in all sorts of ways, but if you call it a midterm adjustment, it doesn't mean a lot to the customer. It doesn't necessarily, it can mean many different things. We always find it simplifies all sorts of things by using the customer's words. I want to change my address, am I current? I want to add a family member. These are very obvious to everybody in the team and to the sponsors you've got. What is it the customer's trying to do and what is it you're trying to fix? And when you start to prioritize what things to fix, i.e. what applications to develop for your chatbot, it's really important to know what the customer's questions are and to have some idea of the frequency of them and the importance of them. And of course, the complexity, going back to the information you require to answer those queries, it's very important to assess that. You can often see when a company has started to think about frequently asked questions, that's the base work that you might require. So if you look at your frequently asked questions that you publish, if you've got them already in the words of the customer, this is a Vodafone application I looked at yesterday, you can see the words of the customer being used. You can see something of the priorities they've given to the top topics that are being asked by customers. And that tells you there's a good chance that they've already worked out the customer needs and what the information is to answer those questions. So you stand a good chance of starting a project about chatbots quite well. If, on the other hand, I took these other two just out of the same market, I went to look at the managed application in Sky to look at support. I had to log in and get through my password, which I can't remember anyway. And I couldn't actually look at any of the support. Or I looked at the O2 one. There's quite a lot of help in here, but it's not categorized by the way that I would say, you know, the question, what is my need? So I would then be thinking, okay, do they actually know what the customer needs are in those words and have they got the information to deal with it? They may well have, but the FAQs are a really good way of looking at, is your business ready to start doing a chatbot project? If it isn't, do an FAQ project first, because that's the basis of doing it. The knowledge base that you build for your agents, the knowledge base that you build for your customers, that's going to be the way in which you're going to provide the ammunition for your chatbot to be programmed correctly. So in this approach, I've taken an example here, which is a typical Amazon one of where's my stuff. Any retailer or logistics companies out there will recognize where's my stuff or where's my parcel as one of the top needs that they request. Then you've got to design the process to be able to resolve that problem. So good triage questions, how you develop a good conversation, what the good information is that helps you identify the cause and the resolution that you might require. So where's my stuff is very often a perception problem. You know, it's going to arrive in 5 days, people are chasing it in 4. It's going to arrive between 2 and 3, they're chasing it in the morning. Those kind of perceptions being managed. Logistics, you've got the problem of the shipper not actually delivering it, or stock, you know, you've ordered it, but actually it wasn't in stock, so the logistics supplier hasn't got it. They've got different root causes, different resolutions, different root cause avoidance loops. But the fundamental is you have to understand that flow in order to be able then to process the logic into the chatbot and to decide whether or not it's a good application for chatbot in that way. And the design methods for doing this are no different really from the self-service methods that have been around over donkey's years. Whether it's person-to-person, IVR app, online chatbot, an avatar, or machine-to-machine discussions, the process of understanding what's going on in the conversation to meet that customer need is absolutely fundamental to starting to design and test and improve the way in which your self-service works. And the methodologies, as I say, this one's going back to 2005, and that was based on something we did in 1995. So it's kind of, you know, the same stuff. And again, a great test I always look at, if somebody says they want to do a chatbot, look at the FAQs, ring through their IVR applications. If the FAQs and the IVR are not good, the chances are they haven't got the skills to define and optimize chatbot application. And that brings us to this final point of it ain't what you do, to quote Bananarama, it's the way that you do it. And as you know, we can see with a lot of the connected devices that are around today, tech isn't techy. It doesn't have to be techy, and it doesn't have to feel that way. And certainly chatbots, it's very important to think about the usability to the nth degree in the way that it works. I'll skip through that application for the moment. This is an application typical of a usability type problem. This is National Trust, car parks, they bring in the car park machines, but the signage around it is not very clear. What to do, where it is very small, and actually they're asking you to take a free ticket if you're a member, which has got no benefit to the customer anyway, so why would they do it? So the standard usability type tests fail, therefore it's not going to work. And that's exactly the same whether you program a chatbot or not. And the critical thing in these kind of cultures is how long does it take to fix something like the signage around a car park machine? Or how long, I'm sure you've tried this, if you're running anything in a contact center, you can see that an app is causing contact because of the way it's not clear what's going on. And yet when you get the phone calls, everybody knows what the problem is who are working in the contact center, but can you get the people who own the app to update it? It's this connection of the closed loop to get the improvement to work, which is so important to improving what's going on. Now, whether you use humans to do that improvement loop, or you've got some AI capability built into the bot to do that improvement loop, it's really important to understand what it takes to do it. And I use this as a bit of a joke, but actually in quite a lot of businesses we work with, it takes less time to build the Empire State Building than it does to get your website, your app updated. And is that feeling of pace that you require if you're going to get into this kind of technology. Moving the detail on quickly, improving the way that the bot conversations work, and really getting that into the team that you've got, getting it into the company's DNA, that's how quickly you move with this kind of test and learn environment. So a passion for people who improve things is really important when you're picking the team to put the chatbot together. And it leads us to a question, do you think that you're going to have more or less people with chatbots when you've put them in that way? So
I think we're going to
Rachel.
poll there, Peter. Yes.
Yeah.
I will share the poll now with everyone. So it's, do you think you'll need more or less people with chatbots in the contact center? So the options are more, less, or the same. I think we'll go to Mike without kind of giving the game away. What do you think people are going to vote?
So I think if we get chatbots correct, we should need the same, but we should be carrying more transactions. So that's my perfect end result. I'm interested to see what the audience think.
Okay, and last few votes coming in. I will close it and share the results. So 57% of people are saying less, 35% are saying the same, and 8% are saying more. Peter, is that what you would have expected from the audience?
I don't know about expectation. I think it's not so much what an average is, it's actually what kind of company you're in. So I often quote the example of taking a team from one of the very large insurers where there were 5,000 people in the contact center and about 20 people doing the analytics. And he took them to another company that was in a different industry, very successful. It had 200 people in the contact center and 200 people doing the analytics. Nice. And so I think what we get is a shift in people and the skill set that's required so that organizations are able to really improve what they're doing. And this is the point I want to make in here, is that I think from an agent point of view, there will be less agents if you get your automation right. And we can see that from what's happened with the other forms of automation, be it apps or IVR or any other form that's there for self-service. If you get that to work really well, you get fewer agents. If you put it in badly, you get more irate customers with more queries. So it's down to putting the right resources into designing the applications, but very importantly to keep them improved. So can I just check with you, Rachel? Is my screen back up on?
I'm just sharing that back now with you.
Okay, there we go. So here we go. So yeah, employed, unemployed, you know, it's like any of these debates. There definitely will be a change in the requirement and the skill levels, but whether that means there'll be more people employed or less depends quite a lot on where your business goes and how you apply this stuff. So for some reason oh, there we go. So my point really is that your optimization team, the team that you put together to put the chatbot in, you need to put money aside to keep an optimization team running, because the artificial intelligence is not going to improve this stuff on its own at this state of play. There are ways in which the intelligence built into chatbots can look at the quality of result and start to make suggestions as to how to help and start to suggest improvements. But today, really, you depend highly on an optimization team. And when you look at call centers today and see how few call centers have optimization teams for their IVR, or indeed optimization teams for their face-to-face conversations, you've got to think hard about where do we get those people from, what skill set do they require, what does it take to make chatbots really work well in the same way as we make FAQs work well, IVRs, face-to-face in that sense. If there's no team, the chances are you're going to end up with an application that customers don't like.
Right.
And then just a sort of final word to throw in about, you know, not forgetting bots talking to bots. There's a really growing area whereby process between two machines is the resolution of a problem rather than somebody picking up a phone to a call center. So it's really important to start thinking about where bot applications can be used to connect whatever your customer is using to whatever you're using, rather than just thinking about this in the sense of conversations traditionally. So those are the three things we've covered off: AI, artificial insemination, what you need, it ain't what you do, and the points: get beyond the jargon. It's not string theory, it's not that complicated, but you do need to sort of challenge jargon when it's used and challenge the phrase artificial intelligence when it's used. You do need your customer and business logic. You have to work it out for each of the applications that you apply. You can get some of them off the shelf to a degree now. You know, the vendors are building libraries of certain applications that are common, but you really need to have your own customer and business logic that applies to your customers for your business. And you have to work that through. Check out your FAQs, that's the start point. Check out your IVR. Have you got the skills to do those things? If you have, you're on a starter. And finally, your team, and where there is intelligence, but your team will optimize what happens. And if not, it won't work for customers. So I think that's it, Rachel. Back to you.
Thank you very much. Some very interesting insights in there, and yeah, the chat room's flying, so we will head over there and see what people are asking. So we've had a question in from Charlie11. He said, does AI prove to be cost effective in a small contact center? Is the cost of installing and managing AI offset by resource savings or NPS increase? Mike, is this a question that you could answer?
Yes, I think so. The tools are certainly getting more accessible. So from a cost perspective, they are getting better. I think, as you would imagine, the ROI from a larger contact center will be much quicker than from a smaller contact center. So just keep that in mind. But certainly with like cloud offerings, consumption-based offerings, I think you probably find that they are more accessible now than they have been before for the smaller contact center operator. With regards to you know, NPS increase, I think overall, if you like, it'll kind of help as long as it's done correctly to keep that customer experience good and positive. It might even actually help to improve if the customer gets a good automation experience. So certainly that would be one of the results we'll be driving for.
Brilliant.
I think, Rachel, if I might comment, is just the question might be rephrased, because AI is a generic. It's a bit like saying, do people prove to be cost effective in a small contact center? It's kind of generic. So it's the question would be, does a bot that does this application prove to be cost effective in a small contact center? Well, this is the point about the jargon of AI, and then being very clear about it. And the second point would be, there are lots of bots around that are virtually free. There are little tools that you can pick up on the web that can be used to do quite a lot of programming. And we're seeing quite a lot of organizations now thinking very hard about the use of bots rather than the change out of old legacy systems, because you can almost put a whole set of logic in front of your old legacy systems, make very large improvements. This is particularly true in the back office, make very large improvements for very low cost. So there's some really interesting situations there to be explored.
Okay. Oh, thank you very much. So we've Charlie's also sent in a tip saying, make sure you know why. Too often I'd see bots implemented to keep with the times with no real understanding of why they're implementing it, at which point it becomes costly and negatively affects CSAT and NPS. I'm guessing, Peter, that's kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, we were discussing this in our Chief Customer Officer Forum recently. It's sort of senior bot people, you know, at C-level type people, and their CEO is turning around to them and saying, we need to have a bot, you know, everybody else got a bot, we need a bot, you know. There is a little bit of that going on, I think, but that can be useful. If your CEO is interested and wants a bot, then that's about doing it well, isn't it?
That's the case.
So we've got a different Charlie saying, give your chatbot a name. A chatbot's name is the first word that customers see when they start chatting, so you want to bring the right associations to mind straight away. Think about Ernest, Facebook Messenger's personal banking bot. What better name to inspire trust? Mike, I know that you're going to go through Kate with us shortly.
Yeah, we have a name. We have a name. But you know, I think it's good. It's helpful. It does create that sort of that welcome sort of persona, I suppose. But just make sure, if you like, that the content is rich and that the experience is good. I suppose that's the kind of caution that we're framing this whole dialogue with. It, if it's disappointing, Ernest can become annoying. So that's the challenge, I suppose.
Thanks. So Joe said, always be honest with the customer regarding the chatbot's restrictions. This will help manage the customer's expectations and reduce disappointment. And Charlie said, customers use chatbots to get things done, so don't make them wade through loads of jargon and complex words to reach their own goal. Having jargon that customers may not understand in your bot script may escalate the contact to an advisor, removing the point of having a bot in the first place. Peter, is that something you'd agree with?
Yeah, it's absolutely basic, isn't it? It's part of the testing that you've got to do to find out what language works for customers. And certainly one of the things that you find is dramatically different results from changing very small things in the way that the conversation is set up. And that's why you've got to have a very thorough test and learn environment to optimize the way the conversations are set.
I think Rachel, the examples like Apple, just like being a user of Apple, it's kind of easy for the customer. Just things are taken care of, and the interface is easy. And like Nest, it's an easy, simple interface. And I think that's you keep those in your mind's eye as like the sort of the benchmark, if you will, and if you can kind of aim for that. I appreciate it. These are, you know, highly resourced organizations, but you know, I think we can aspire to that type of that reach, and keep all the codey stuff way back office. Just make it very, very simple for the customer.
Yeah. So we've had an opinion in from John. He says, it sounds as if you're saying my labour expense will increase because I could potentially reduce the number of tier 1 employees, but I'd need a larger number of analysts, which comes at a higher rate. Peter, I'm guessing this is what you're saying about you know, looking after the knowledge base.
Yeah, I think it's a fundamental question, and it's a fundamental point about the whole contact center industry, is that actually, if you see the contact center as the thing that you're trying to optimize, that's different from if you see what the customer has to do being optimized. Because customers generally don't want to do a lot. They don't want to have whatever the problem was. They don't want to have the query they don't understand, or the letter they don't understand, or, you know, any of those things that can be avoided. That's fundamental. And what you see all the time is that you spend a lot of money in handling the contact, and you might spend very little money in improving or avoiding the contact. So it's a question for any contact center director, is where do I put my money? And it's like changing the jet engines while the plane's in flight. You don't get to, just suddenly swap the money over and everything's suddenly right. So you've got to make conscious decisions about how much you move the dial to get more analytical capability, more analytical skill that reduces the amount of contact that you then have to handle. And that's the fundamental of what a contact center director's job is.
Oh, well, thank you very much. We're now coming to a poll, so I'm going to launch this one now. Let me launch that. Which do you think is the most valuable use of AI in the contact center? Is it communicating with customers, i.e. chatbots, improving self-service, replacing IVR processes, capturing data from customer interactions, or identifying call types and passing contacts to relevant channels? Peter, what are your thoughts on what might come out?
I know that's a really hard one, actually. I think, when I start to think about AI in the contact center at the moment, then I'm thinking about optimization loops, and I'm sort of, really thinking about the use of data. But when I talk to people about this stuff, the kind of topics they're talking about are the economic questions. So can they sell more stuff? Can they improve their NPS scores? It's those kind of areas which I think people are applying AI to.
Okay, I will share.
It doesn't really fit the poll, does it?
No. So I'll share the results. So 67% say improving self-service, 14% say communicating with customers, 8% say capturing data from customer interactions, 5% say identifying call types, and 5% say replacing IVR processes. Mike, is that something that you would have expected to see?
Yeah, I think the focus really is around that experience and getting that experience right, complementing your brand, and making sure if it can be eliminated, then eliminate it. And really, from that perspective, I think that should be the most valuable place to drive.
Okay, on that note, I'm going to hand the baton over to you, Mike. So I'll just make you the presenter.
Very good. Showing my screen. Is that okay, Rachel?
Yes, I can see it now. Brilliant.
Great. Okay. So Genesis have a capability which we've been using for quite a while, and we call it intelligent automation. But what's nice is it has kind of evolved on the back of our customers' needs, really. And then with the sort of arrival, if you like, of our artificial intelligence tools and chatbots, we've been able to adopt it and modify it to accommodate those channels, and it really becomes quite powerful. And what I have is a couple of slides to take you through a scenario, really, and then a little video just to show you some capability in action. So kind of stand by for that in a couple of slides. And the way I've positioned it really is just around a contact center manager looking to deliver a better, self-service, but is challenged to do that with kind of outdated technology. And I think, you'll have heard me before mention this, Rachel. There is a lot of kind of outdated technology in our contact center space, if you will. So to that end, often customers are bound by the tools they have available. So today they're experiencing inconsistent experiences, whether that's self-service and IVR, like Peter mentioned. It seems that no matter how long or how many times we revisit that sort of notion of getting IVR better, it seems to be just difficult for people to make those improvements. And then also as well, we're seeing some challenges around inconsistency on digital channels. And to be able to kind of bring in these type new tools like artificial intelligence into a kind of an aging infrastructure is definitely a challenge. And from that perspective, we think it will be difficult to leverage and get the best of a new investment. And then finally, we've always seen this sort of split really between I'm running my contact center and from the business level, but actually I'm reliant on colleagues in the IT department to help me make changes to my routing, to my customer experience flows, and my reporting even. So to that end, we really passionately try to unpick that to kind of give the business what they need to be able to pilot their customer service, sales, collections operation, whatever it may be that you do in your contact center, so that the business pilots, not the actual IT department. we kind of see that the IT guys really should be the enabler as opposed to the controller. And like John, I suppose the question for the audience is, is your business ready for the new consumer? And we know these statistics, but they are just getting stronger as the months go by. And customers will engage with a brand. 85% of them are already there on customers' websites, trying to figure out from the brand, can I do it myself? Can I access the FAQ and resolve my issue? And only if I can't, then I'll look to engage. And if we go straight across to the other side, we do know, and the fact is still there, it's a very stable statistic, that 50% of customers prefer to kind of escalate in their mind's eye to a voice call to achieve a resolution. I suppose it's a better way for them to express their emotion of frustration if things aren't going the way that they would expect it. But it's still, if you like, half of that customer would say, I want to speak to somebody. We know from the proliferation of smartphones that the number of customers using 4 touch points or more is like getting close to half, and it will be kind of by 2020. But for this particular webinar, the expected increase in self-service for 2020 will be like 3/4. So all of our interactions, if you will, could be provided an automated response alternative, which obviously would be more efficient for the operation, as long as that sort of experience is a good one. So to that end, our consumer is kind of ready, and like Peter sort of showed in his talk, there has been a surge, if you will, of sort of we can bring this, we can do this, we can improve that. And to that end, I think we're seeing a lot of players coming to the market. We're seeing quite a lot of established players sort of providing offerings and alternatives. But again, I suppose reinforcing the early statistic, by 2020, customers will manage 85% of their relationships with their brands without necessarily reaching a human. So from that perspective, this is something that we need to leverage. We need to work on it and think about it, if you like, in a considered way, and make it absolutely part of our sort of strategy with regards to sales, service, whatever it may be that what we're doing. So I mentioned in the sort of like the run up to the start, Rachel, about the Genesis view. I suppose really, we have a capability. We're kind of watching what's happening in the industry. We're sort of seeing, if you like, the sort of chatbot standalone vendors, if you will, jumping in with like niche solutions, piece solutions, which are effective. And as long as the sort of the guidance, if you like, that Peter provided are there, then they should be in elements somewhat successful. But what we do find is when my customer kind of needs to kind of escalate to a human, or if you like, I get stuck, then we often find that those little sort of siloed operations tend to become frustrating. And then if you look on the other side, where you have like a general purpose, the kind of the larger IT provider type capabilities, so the general purpose artificial intelligence, you'll see it's a very sort of broad sort of conversation. And to that end, if you like, they have to be very sort of well and established within your organization to kind of capture what is the kind of customer query today. And to that end, could be quite heavy lifting with regards to services. And I suppose our caution would be, as a technology provider, if I'm spending too many services to get my sort of AI chatbot solution kind of working, then that's a worry, because services tend to mean customizations, and if I need to change those services, I'm going to have to spend more money on services to make some changes. So we always found that to be an area of kind of caution. I'm not saying that they're not successful, just be cautious with how deep you go into a particular subject matter. Our own sort of position tends to be more around, we understand the customer's journeys around the kind of contact center. We've been doing it for many years. We kind of have this focus on customer experience in our sort of DNA every day. And to that end, with the arrival of these new tools, it's kind of, in a considered way, how can we bring this capability into our offering so that it becomes seamless? If I need to sort of transition from automation to human, it's very, very clean. It's very, very considered. And also as well, how can I utilize the capability to make my employees' life better and easier within the actual operation itself? So to that end, we're kind of seeing some nice traction with our approach. And what I have here, Rachel, is a short video just to kind of give you a sense of one capability where we're kind of using our own offering, if you will, in conjunction with another sort of capability as well. So it just shows multiple sort of apps in action.
Brilliant. I will share that now. Okay. Brilliant. So I will now hand the baton back to you, Mike.
Okay. Great. Thanks
for the video.
Okay, so hopefully that kind of just give you a feel for what this kind of combination can look like. In that example, we're kind of using, if you like, Genesis capability along with a third-party bot, like was mentioned, and we kind of see that as being how things will evolve over time. The beauty, obviously, is that we're looking here at automation, and the nice thing about that is automation is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They don't get tired, don't get ill, it just sort of cranks on. So from that perspective, the expected if you like benefits from these kind of applications can be quite compelling. Whether it's in decrease of handling time, increasing first contact resolution, we don't expect to sort of see that the kind of fulfillment of the request for the customer. We would like that to be completely fulfilled in the bot, but we like to have that sort of option there to kind of bring the automation and the human together in a nice, elegant way, so that if necessary and when necessary, that becomes quite seamless for the customer. So ultimately, I think the mention, if you will, of the ready sort of the library of micro apps that are already there. I mean, think about that again. Over the years, we've been developing those, we've been polishing those, making them better, coming across different circumstances where we can make improvements on those micro apps. And by giving that sort of library as part of your license, it really does help our customers get to a fast start to value and reduce that sort of cost of deployment. So from that perspective, we always kind of see, well, what should I be expecting by way of return, Mike? And it's a fair question, and we like to kind of give guidance this way, just to sort of help contain that question, because we can't always guarantee that we're going to get 58%, in administration costs, if you like, from that perspective. But you should expect to see a very healthy sort of return on investment from the spend on this particular subject. And I think the example that we showed in the video is just one example. We have some more videos available on our own YouTube channel, so kind of have a look there. You'll see the one that we have shown already, if you like, in the middle, and there's two other ones that just may be of interest to kind of show you how the alternative can be handled. And then the last thing really is just around John himself. So, you know, with the kind of notion, if you will, that empower the business, we're just very passionate about that because it works. You know, this sort of call center or contact center manager now really is ready to innovate. He's kind of being able to sort of marshal his costs. That notion of designing once and deploying is really important, because just resolving an issue on chat, actually, what about Facebook? What about you know, Apple Business Chat as it emerges? We don't want to be kind of repeating these kind of efforts over and over again if applications are available just to allow you to plug straight into kind of off-the-shelf available offerings that your customers may be using. So think about that, and then finally, you know, empowering a business user, really, that for us really is key, because it's a bit like the point that Peter mentioned. You kind of have to constantly monitor, constantly improve, constantly revisit, take the feedback from your customer and show your customer that you're listening by tuning to that feedback, so that they're feeling the experience of the app's getting better and the chatbot experience is getting better. So in that way, again, that just builds further trust, further NPS improvement scores, and an overall better experience for your customer. And that's where I end, Rachel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will put my screen up. Yeah, thank you very much, Mike. There's some very interesting kind of tips, especially the video showing kind of it in a real life working example. So the chat room's still flying. We've had a tip in from Ali, who said, we currently have a knowledge base when customers want to contact us. The keywords produce a maximum of 5 FAQs to try and answer. If not, the answer is submitted for an agent to answer. Those answers are then assessed and added to the knowledge base for future reference and improved database of FAQs. Peter, what are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I typed into the chat room, said that she should get the champagne for that. Sorry, she or he, I'm not sure, it's an ally of one kind or the other. But I think that improvement of your FAQs is the same process on FAQs and knowledge bases as it is on the chatbots. And it is the area that the AI can help. Quite a lot of knowledge-based tools today have AI built into them to show, you know, there's either a manual rating done by the customer who says, did this help you? Yes, no, all that kind of thing. Or indeed starts to correlate with the outcome of the call. So the AI looks at the outcome of the call and the use of the knowledge base. And by doing that, starts to self-improve in that sort of way. So yeah, great tip.
Thank you. So Ken's asked a question. In the recent I/O, Google just announced Duplex, which uses AI for people to call on their behalf. The language and natural conversation capability is just amazing, talking like a real person and understanding the nuances of language. Is this a red flag for small and medium contact centers? Peter, I don't know, you know, I watched this yesterday and it was very interesting. Hearing the bot kind of going while waiting for it was actually making an appointment for a hairdressing appointment.
Yeah, I saw that in the chat room. Looked it up just while Mike was talking, and I mean, the voice capability is fine, but again, you've got to think, what is the app that the voice capability is being used for? So if you've got a repetitive thing like, let's say, a reminder from a doctor's for an appointment, you get a text for that. If you get a voice calling you, and you can interact with it and say, yeah, I am coming, or no, actually, I can't make that appointment, and it can do something more than the text, then it's really good for those quite simple situations where there are only so many options that are going to occur in the conversation. And there's certainly no reason.
Oh, sorry. I think this was actually done the other way, whereas the bot phoned up the hairdressing salon to make an appointment on behalf of someone.
Off phone, yeah, coming off the phone.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah.
So
I
think
I must look at it in a bit more detail.
Pardon?
I must look at it in a bit more detail, because if it's got a wide capability, if it's more than speech to speech, you know, if I can give it an instruction, there's presumably an app library of some kind of things that it's capable of doing.
Yeah,
interesting to have a look.
We'll post all that on the page afterwards. So I think we've got time for one more question very quickly. Chatbots virtual agent, has anyone seen a difference in NPS CSAT between these versus other self-service options, i.e. IVR, online knowledgeable? Mike, I don't know whether you've seen any difference.
Not that I can sort of recall, if you like, straight away. You know, again, though, I would sort of go back to the sort of the notion of keeping that sort of experience right and consistent with your brand, and making sure it's not like a negative to that sort of investment that you already have. But no, facts, if you like, I'm afraid I don't have those available.
Not a problem. So unfortunately, we've reached the top of the hour. So if you could put in the chat room in 1 or 2 words, what did you like best about today's webinar? Oh dear. Today's winning tip is from Joe. The most important thing in customer satisfaction: don't force the chatbot onto your customers. Remember that it is limited and cannot handle all queries. So don't be afraid to pass conversations over to an advisor. So we'll be in touch, Joe, 31. There is a survey. So if you could complete that when you leave. If you would like a demonstration of the Genesis software, that's in the survey. So if you just leave an answer there. We have taken a recording of today's webinar, and that will be available later on this afternoon. We're back next week with the latest changes in contact center technology. And I just want to say thank you very much to today's 2 speakers, to Peter Massey from Bud. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rachel. Cheers.
And to Mike Murphy from Genesis, thank you very much as well.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. Thanks, Peter.
And we'll see you. Oh, yeah, we'll see everybody next week. Thank you very much. Bye.